Hey, my name is Jim Burris, and I help people in their 40s and 50s transition to that next level in their career, or maybe you have that entrepreneurial spirit. I can help you finally start that business you've been wanting to start. What is my background? It's sales and marketing. I've had a huge personal development experience over the last 20 years. Coming from a kid who was essentially just an inner city kid in St. Louis, raised very blue collar environment, got into sales, and that really catapulted my career and kind of into my dream job and jobs, and ultimately starting my own business. So the goal of these videos is to just share my experience, and more importantly, the knowledge and the wisdom that I've gained over the last 20 something years to help you wherever you're at on your journey. And today I want to talk about something that's definitely near and dear to my heart, and it's probably something that you've experienced in your life. If something continues to show up in your life, like you may have, no matter what job you go to, there's always a type of person who gets on your nerves, or if you get in certain relationships, whether it be with like a romantic relationship, it ends a certain way. If you start to see patterns in your life, that's really what this video is about, to help you recognize them, and more importantly, what to do with them. We're going to talk about it's chapter 15 or part 15 of the Master Key System. We're just going to talk about a piece of it. This is one of the books that I primarily reference, that I'm in a peer group now that I study this book with. It's full of it's a very small book, but the wisdom is very profound. It's actually the book that Napoleon Hill, I guess, started Napoleon Hill on his journey, if that makes any sense, if you're familiar with Think and Grow Rich. So I don't want to dive too deep into about the where the book comes from and yada yada yada, but we'll talk more about that later on. So let's go ahead and dive into today's video, and I'll walk you through what we're going to do. So what we're going to talk about, I already mentioned Master Key, part 15 of the Master Key System, and I'm going to give you some examples from my life to hopefully make it relatable to you, so you can, again, identify those patterns, and I'm going to walk you through a process of what to do with it, because that's a big challenge, right? A lot of times we develop an awareness, but we don't know what to do next. So I'm going to give you some actionable steps. So in part 15, section 3, I've got it highlighted here. Took a picture from the book. Difficulties, inharmonies, and obstacles indicate that we are either refusing to give out what we no longer need, or refusing to accept what we require. So again, we'll just call it problems or things that are out of alignment, depending what books you've read, you might use that term. Things that make you mad, things that cause you grief, unhappiness, you're not content. Maybe you feel insecure or fearful and anxiety. If those things keep showing up, no, this isn't a replacement for therapy. I'm not saying that if there's like depression and anxiety in your life, but if things keep showing up in your life in a certain way, they're basically there to tell you something, right? So all conditions and experiences that come to us are for our benefit. This is one of the key takeaways from this chapter, that just having the awareness of going like, okay, this thing, again, whether it's a person, it's always an emotion, I guess, at the end of the day. If a person makes you feel in a certain emotion, or if if you're always getting into car accidents or getting tickets, or just look for things that continue to show up in your life. It may not be as extreme. Hopefully it's not as extreme as car accidents, but I'll give you an example here in a little bit of a personal story for me that I became aware of. And then once I gained awareness of it and took the action steps to move away from it, really more importantly, not move away from it, but understand what it was trying to teach me, right? So we gain strength in proportion to the effort expended. So you're going to learn something about yourself if you take action on the information that I'm going to provide you here, but you need to the effort extended. So if you just go, well, I always get this person in my life that is just frustrating, it just is what it is. You need to take the time and dive deeper into that, and you'll develop a better understanding of the root cause. It's the emotion, essentially, behind it, whether it's from a trauma, right? There's all kinds of shit that's probably happened in your life that causes you to think and ultimately feel a certain way. And there's subconscious programming that impacts your behavior and more thoughts, right? So it can just be this cycle that you can't break out of. But once you recognize those difficulties and inharmonies and obstacles, and you take the time to learn the lesson, it creates a whole new world for you, right? So I'm going to read another quick passage from the book here. I don't know if it's called passages, but section 5. We cannot obtain what we lack if we tenaciously cling to what we have. We are able to consciously control our conditions as we come to sense the purpose of what we attract and are able to extract from each experience only what we require for further growth. Our ability to do this determines the degree of harmony or happiness we obtain. So, going to go back to nothing may reach us except what is necessary for our growth. So think about where you are in your life and what things have potentially been a roadblock, a continuous roadblock. An example in my life is I've always had a person in my career or business that I tried to start that there was so much inharmony with that person and myself that I would self-sabotage. I wrote an extensive list. I don't think I have it in here to share. I guess I could share some of the names and maybe, no, I'll share the scenarios. I don't want to share the names because, I wouldn't care if they watch this video, but it's nothing personal. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it was me. It was what was inside of me of how this person showed up. So, thinking early on, when I was in the Marine Corps, I always felt the need to I needed to get away and think. So there was this level of insecurity that I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I was thinking more about when I start to get out of the Marine Corps, this insecurity of what I'm going to do. And then, so once I transitioned out, there was jobs that I had for a few years, about a 5 or 6, maybe 7 year block until I got into sales when I really found out what I wanted to do in my late 20s. And I transitioned into sales. But I carried with me this level of insecurity that ultimately showed up through people. And each organization that I worked for, there was always a key player who basically broadcasted back to me my emotions and what was going on in here, my self-image, what I thought I deserved. Because I would get to a certain level, right? So here I'll talk about the conditions. I would always start off very quickly and excel very fastly, where I would hit quota. One of my sales jobs, I was the national salesperson of the year. The first year, I had this huge ramp, a takeoff. I wouldn't say it was a ramp. I just took off like a rocket, and then slowly I started to self-sabotage myself, because ultimately my self-image wasn't the person that could have that kind of success. And then these people would show up that would allow me to use them. Again, might be weird language, but just kind of follow along, maybe watch the video a few times, that would reinforce the fact that I was insecure and unworthy. So that would ultimately impact my behavior. And as my career kept going up, I kept getting, better jobs, what I would consider better jobs as far as career trajectory. But then I always get to a point where there was a person that, there were people that I would hate, just had pure hatred for them, which is just another kind of symptom of insecurity, right? And then other relationships that I would get in, work relationships, there would always be some sort of I didn't say to myself, I'm not worthy, but I would become very stoic and closed off. And ultimately that would impact, just how far you can go, because people think you're only capable of so much. They don't see the true you. And this happened for over a decade. And again, nothing ever, it didn't impact my behavior to the point where one time where I was inappropriate in a work setting where my anger got the best. Nothing, I didn't physically hurt it, but it was just an argument. And at the end of the day, it was just because I didn't know how to communicate effectively that or I didn't have the belief that I deserved to have the conversations and state my opinion, right? So, and again, this isn't a boo-hoo moment. I mean, I'm so grateful now that I recognized it, and that my trajectory and what I'm working on now, I come to with a whole new sense of purpose and belief in myself. So I hope that example helps. It may not be a person, but it could be some area in your life where money is a good one, where you maybe you make a significant amount of money, but then you fall off a cliff, or just analyze whatever it is in your area. Whether it's you get healthy, then you fall off. It's typically I'm going to say it all goes back to your self-image, and that's really the big premise of this book, and a few that that I'm going to reference and do videos on, is really you need to change your inner world before you can change your outer world. And again, this is for business. This is for life. This channel is mostly about business, but business and life, essentially they're the same. You're alive and you're doing your business in your life, right? So how you do one thing is how you do everything. So until you develop a proper self-image, you're going to continue to have difficulties and inharmonies and obstacles that show up in your life until you learn the lesson from them. It doesn't mean that you need to take 20 years to do it. You can just take the time and follow the advice here shortly at the end of this video, where you do the exercise to determine what those are, and then you go to work on them. So, and not everybody has these, right? You might be saying, well, what about guys like Mark Cuban? And so they're successful guys. They probably already had a positive self-image. You know what I mean? Some people are just unconsciously competent. They don't need to do certain exercises to change parts of their self-image. They may already possess it. A lot of it is determined two things. It all depends on how you're raised. But then you could have someone that was raised the same way, like twins, that one becomes super successful and one has a poor self-image and really doesn't go too far or makes different decisions in their life, and it's really about what's in here. So the one example where the person takes off and has a super successful life from the get-go, it's all about how they interpreted the information and the stories that they told themselves about the information. And then the other person could have had the same story, same household, but they just told themselves a different story. Like this one could be their dad always said, you guys are worthless. Or that's never happened to me in my life, but that does happen to people. So these two twins, we'll call them twin brothers, that their dad tells both of them they're worthless. This one could use it as fuel to go, I'm going to prove him wrong, or no, I'm not. That would be a great self-image to go, I have that much love for myself. I'm not worthy, or I am worthy. I don't have to listen to this person. And the other person could hear that same story, not even the same story, the same words, the actions from their parent, their father, whoever it was, that you're not worthy, and they internalize that. And then when they go out and do things, that program, that story that they told themselves, they could have a little bit of success, and odds are, and this is a general situation, they're going to fall off a cliff because that program running in the background is you're not worthy, you're not deserving. So they'll self-sabotage or whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios. Get addicted to drugs, right? The key is awareness to how things are showing up. You can use the word manifesting, right, in your life. But how are things showing up? What patterns do you notice? Do you get in a relationship with a significant other and it always goes south? Maybe it's you. You know what I mean? Maybe it's you attracting those people into your life that just confirm kind of what's going on in there. So how do you use this? I think I've talked a little bit about it. So what keeps showing up in your life? Is it a mad person? Or somebody that just pisses you off, unhappy people? Do you go from rich to broke? Are you surrounded by, just look at things in your life that you don't like, specifically to starting your business or your career in sales. If you do well, then fall off a cliff, do well and fall off a cliff, something's wrong there, right? Something's going on, most likely in here. Now, there are things in sales, right? Some unpredictable things. It's not always you, but just look for those patterns. And this here it's really non-negotiable. If you're not willing to take the time to do this, I don't know why you watch the video this long, but you need to take the time to write. I'm a 47, going to be 48-year-old dude this year. I write with a pen and paper. I write on my iPad. You may take notes in your phone, whatever it takes. Just take the time to sit down and write down, hey, what shows up in my life that I don't like, and what shows up that I do. It's maybe do a left and a right side, and you can say, hey, I've always every job that I get, there's always someone that shows up that makes me want to quit my job or impacts my performance and impacts me emotionally. So you're attracting that. That's something going on in here. And then the other side of that, you can say, well, what's going on right? What's going well in my life? And it may be I have a beautiful relationship with my kids or my girlfriend or your wife, or the list of the things that you would consider negative on one side, and then the things that are positive on the other side. And you can just do negative. That's what you want to focus on. But if you're having trouble identifying patterns, write them down, and then see. You don't need to go back and uncover, right, what made me insecure initially, right? You don't really have to do that. I know there's a lot of people out there that tell you to do that, but you got to be mindful of who you listen to. So just trust me here until you find out I'm wrong or lying to you. You don't need to go back and figure out that, your neighbor said you were dumb when you were 10 years old. That doesn't. You just need to understand the emotion, right? So do the work of the writing and identify the emotion that you feel. It's always an emotion. So how things show up in our life, our emotions impact everything, whether we know it or not, right? So identify, anger, insecurity. You just take the time. Use a thesaurus or a dictionary if you have to. There's a great book called Ask and It's Given by Esther Hicks. There's a chart. I wish I have it. I just don't have it here. It's the emotional scale, emotional balance scale, and joy is on top, and then at the bottom is it's like just fear, depression, this just despair. It's the opposite end of how you'd want to feel. And I think it's like 13 emotions on there. So use that as a guide to help you identify, I've been feeling this way about this, you know what I mean? So that I'm going to go back to my example. Hey, these people show up in my life, in my career, or businesses that I've tried to start, right? There's always somebody that I would ultimately make the bad guy. And then once I link the emotion, how I really felt about them, and I realized, it was just my own internal feeling of unworthiness or insecurity. And then that would cascade into other parts, and essentially it just slowed me down or stalled me, or I would make decisions based on those emotions, like quitting a job, finding a new one. So it could be, again, just identify what it is in your scenario, write it out. So you need to write out a different story. So that's the second part of this is what do you do with it? So you identify it. We say, okay, we know here this is what we don't want. And then you need to write a different story. It doesn't have to be 100 pages. It can be a sentence, right? So write out a different story. Actually write it out. So, and then take the time. We think in pictures. So imagine what it would be like if that person showed up in a different way, which would ultimately be you showing up in a different way. So when you write it out, go, okay, what do I wish would have happened? And then take the time and just visualize. We can all visualize. If you need to work on that, let me know. Leave a link, a comment below, and I'll tell you how you can help. I'll help you get better at visualizing. Essentially, revise that situation, that scenario. It doesn't have to be a 50-minute movie. It can be like a 3-second clip of you. Instead of when you meet this person, they're always you think, oh, they're going to be mad at me. You can make a mental image of them going, hey, one of the things that I've done is one of this real life event when there was a person that showed up in my life. I started visualizing them saying, hey, I'm out of here. They were leaving. And guess what? They left. They were ultimately out of my life. You know what I mean? So, and they don't have to leave. You can make a scenario where they stay and there's harmony and you work together. Whatever it is, just spend the time, close your eyes and think, right? And just think about it. You don't have to take 10 hours a day. You can take 10 minutes here, 10 minutes, 30 seconds if that's all it takes. Just sit down, close your eyes. It's just think of any other skill you've learned, whether it's, basketball is a really good example, or golf. The more you practice with your 9-iron, the better you get. The more free throws you shoot, the better you get. If you play an instrument, you know that, like I play the drums, so there's a couple little grooves. I'll hear them and then I'll try to play them, and it's like, it's terrible. But after repetition, repetition, you just develop the ability to do it. There's no difference in this, except this, to me, has a much larger impact on your life than shooting free throws, unless you're in the NBA, I suppose. But so just put in the effort. You're not climbing Mount Everest. I'm not asking you to like go sleep at base camp when it's 30 degrees below zero. I'm asking you to just take 10 minutes and just write down, okay, this is an area of my life I want to change. This person's showing up, this difficulty, inharmony, this obstacle is continuing to show up. What can I do about it? Write it out, and then write out the opposite scenario. And then visualize. You want to get, and when I get down here to 4, I will dive into like the kind of the real master key to making rapid change. So once you've identified it, and then you'll also want to identify those thoughts that you have during the day, where just start paying attention to them when you catch yourself going like, give me a real world example. This one person, I would always catch myself going, man, I don't want to deal with this motherfucker today. You know what I mean? I just negative stuff, and I would be negative about him, and then I would think, and I would go down these rabbit holes of like, I could never do anything right by him. Man, I don't even want to take this problem to him. I need his help, but he won't help me. But, it was just, and again, it was all, not to say that this person wasn't a bit of an asshole to me. They were, you know what I mean? But I can't control that. I can control me. So once I learned to change how I thought about it, right? And I literally say the word change. And you'll get to the ability where you'll catch your thoughts very often. I don't catch 100% of them. I don't think that somebody out there can. There's probably some freak show that's so disciplined that they don't think anything but positive thoughts. Great for them. But you'll get to the point where you catch your emotions going negative, right? And you just say change, or use a word that works for you, or do something, right? I think it's just NLP is really, you don't need to know what it is, but it's just a technique to shift your focus. So I use the word change, and then I, have the habit of like, okay, what do I want? And it takes practice. You're not going to get it right the first time, but just keep doing it. After a couple days, weeks, and months, you'll do this for 30 days, and you'll be a completely different person. I guarantee it. So now the next level to really making rapid change that I've discovered, and this isn't I'm not some guru, this is just from personal experience. I meditate. You don't have to. I'm not saying you have to. And you don't necessarily have to meditate to get into, I have alpha and theta written down here. So these are brain waves. And you get into these states naturally throughout the course of the day, depending on what's going on. Waking consciousness is beta. This is beta brainwaves. So we're conscious. I can see the wall. I'm looking at the camera. Alpha is more of a relaxed state. So think of it like you're just kind of just so relaxed. You're in the zone. Most people need to close their eyes and like get in there and just totally relax. But you can do it while you're awake as well. You can get to an alpha brain state. It's just from being focused and relaxed. And then theta is it's essentially body asleep, mind awake. You may have heard the term SATS, state akin to sleep, which is it's a Neville Goddard. It's another author from the 20s to 40s, I think he was around, where he talks about making changes to essentially your subconscious mind, where you go in and you can reprogram yourself to just be more automatic. That sounds so freaky and weird, I know, to most people to say, change your program, but it's just changing patterns, thought patterns and habits. Thoughts are just a habit, essentially, that you continue to have. So by visualizing, and I don't want to spend all day talking about why that works, but just trust me and just try it. Get yourself in a state of deep relaxation, and then that little mental movie you made earlier of creating a different scenario, just as you're relaxed, play that scenario, the new scenario, over and over in your mind, and then come back to regular consciousness and go about your day. And I'm curious, If you do it, come back and leave comments below, or if you have questions, leave them below. And as always, if this video helped you, I appreciate a like and subscribe. And thank you for following along on the journey.